Welcome to my field of dreams. It reaches far and wide. To you it might seem nothing much, but I stand here with pride. If you build it, they will come.
Hi, I'm Nemo James, singer, songwriter and author, and I'd like to welcome you once again to my podcast, Nemo James Travel Diaries. This podcast is ad-free, but I hope you will forgive me for including short excerpts of some of my songs. If you would like to hear more of the songs I include, you will find a link to them in the show notes. If you enjoy this podcast, please click the subscribe button and share it with your friends. It will mean a lot to me. On this episode, we will be traveling to Bangkok and Chang Mai in Thailand and Luang Prabang in Laos. Much as we love travel, we were beginning to struggle with all the airport chaos of recent years, which was why we were so delighted when it took only 15 minutes to get through check-in and security. After a coffee and a stroll around duty-free, we were ready for the 20-mile walk to the departure gate. We were flying with the excellent Emirates Airlines, and I had managed to book the twin seats at the back of the plane, which were well worth the extra cost. The seats were comfortable and reclined a long way back, but best of all was the in-flight entertainment, which kept getting better and better. I remembered the days when a few TV screens were scattered along the aircraft and you had to pay to borrow headsets made of two hollow tubes. There would only be one or two films showing on a long flight, and if you happened to be asleep when they came on, it was tough luck. On our flight, there were large screens in the backs of the seats, and countless TV programs and films to watch, just like a home video system with programs on demand. The 6-hour flight to Dubai went quickly, and after a 2-hour stopover, we continued for another 6 hours to Bangkok. The bubble burst at passport control, where we had to queue for an hour, which was not due to the volume of arrivals but to the lack of staff. During the journey to our hotel, we had fun trying to decipher what our taxi driver was saying. His English wasn't too bad, but he was unable to pronounce some letters. It felt like we were in a game show where we were given sentences with letters missing and had to guess what was being said. When approaching our hotel, he wanted to show us a good restaurant, and his directions were,
"To get to restaurant, you turn right by river and follow road, walking to end of the street."
It was around 8 p.m. when we arrived at our hotel, so after an excellent pad thai, we went back to our room. There was a 7-hour time difference, so I was dreading waking up in the middle of the night, but to my surprise, we both woke up at 9 o'clock and missed breakfast. Coming from Mlini, a tiny village in Croatia, where the recent arrival of 2 ducks constituted a significant increase in the local population, Bangkok came as quite a culture shock. I popped out to get some mobile phone SIM cards and was overtaken by 4 motorcycles riding at normal speed on the pavement. To cross the road, there was some kind of pedestrian crossing, but no lights. After waiting 10 minutes for a gap in the traffic, I knew I had to make a run for it, although I was anxious that if I got run over, the insurance company would claim it was an act of suicide and refuse to pay up. It occurred to me that disabled people living in Bangkok would have to remain on their own block or hire a taxi to take them from one side of the road to the other. The first thing we noticed was how warm and friendly everyone was. When I changed money at the airport, the young girl serving me put her hands together in a praying gesture, bowed and said what I assumed was thank you. I thought that kind of thing only happened in films, but it happened everywhere in Bangkok, and people seemed to have a real desire to please. When I returned to England, I was going to write to my mother's local council and insist that all civil servants bow in the same way. Before leaving England, some friends surprised us by saying that most of their time in Bangkok they ate in air-conditioned shopping malls because it was so hot outside. That was the last thing we were expecting to do, but the sudden contrast between a freezing cold England and the extreme heat of Bangkok meant that when lunchtime came, we couldn't get to a shopping mall fast enough. Our hotel was right next to the SkyTrain, which was convenient although very crowded. Early evening, we took a private boat tour on a long-tailed boat. They looked a bit like gondolas, only with what looked like an aeroplane engine mounted on the back. I was expecting it to go plodding along like a gondola when suddenly the driver hit the throttle and we took off at great speed. The water was surprisingly choppy, so we were bouncing up and down waiting for a wave to soak us, but surprisingly we remained dry. The river was very busy and was full of giant pieces of green weed, which I would have expected to get caught up in the propeller, but the driver didn't seem to be worried by them. Suddenly, we turned off the main river and started moving slowly along beautiful little canals in near silence. There were houses built on stilts over the water on either side. It was dusk with a deep red sky which slipped effortlessly into darkness. Houses lit up, so we were able to look through the open fronts at people going about their lives as if we weren't there. I couldn't have wished for a better start to our holiday. Next day, we went to the local temples in town. We had intended to make our own way there with the SkyTrain and water bus, which sounded like a great adventure, but the receptionist talked us into booking a private tour guide. The guide picked us up from our hotel in her car, and it wasn't long before we were sitting in an awful traffic jam, wishing we had taken the train instead. We had been promised a guide who spoke fluent English, but her English was so bad that I was considering paying her extra to stop talking. She was a very nice lady, so we made the odd grunt here and there to trick her into thinking we understood. First stop was the famous gold Buddha, which was the biggest solid gold Buddha in the world, weighing around 5.5 tons. Next, we went to the nearby Emerald Buddha, which our guide told us was made of emerald, which was a bit of a porky pie. It was made of jasper, nothing to do with the ghost, but even as a semi-precious stone, it was still very impressive. I loved the signs we saw at the entrance to most temples.
Beware the fraud, guide playoff. In the temple, try to scam the tourists to try to buy the things, and tour service very cheap, and beware the sprinter property of you.
And another sign saying,
Beware scam in this temple. Beware Thai gentlemen well-dressed who polite discussion try to scam tourists to buy tour service, very expensive, from government or suit.
They had gone through the expense of producing a professional sign, but had not bothered to ask an English-speaking person to check it first. Or maybe they ordered the signs from one of the scamps they were warning about. At breakfast the next morning, we were greeted by some extraordinary news on the TV. We had just flown halfway across the world in a big piece of metal weighing hundreds of tons and arrived safely. While that was happening, a group of people in Glasgow popped round to their local pub to enjoy a few beers when a helicopter crashed into it and killed 7 of them. When faced with a risk, people often say, "I might get killed crossing the road," but how often do you hear, "I might get killed by a helicopter"? Next day, while Federika was shopping and visiting a few art galleries, I went for a day to the Bang Samran fishing lake. I was picked up by taxi and taken through Bangkok in a never-ending traffic jam to the outskirts of town. At the lake, a guide was appointed to look after me for the day, and I was given a nice little hut at the edge of the water. The guide was very good, and although it was a struggle to understand him, there wasn't much he needed to say. He knew the best technique to use for the lake, and while he mixed up a large bucket of rice powder mixed with buttermilk for the smell, he gave me a 100% guarantee that I would catch fish. I took it with a pinch of salt. As any fisherman will tell you, it is a guarantee that cannot be made. He pressed the rice mixture together to form a ball about the size of a grapefruit and cast it out for me. I had been fishing for over 50 years, and in all that time, the biggest fish I ever caught was 7 kilos. But after 1 minute of my bait touching the water, I had a 23-kilo catfish on the line. It took 15 minutes to land, and I asked my guide to photograph it in case I didn't catch any more. He put the catfish carefully back in the water, as although it was edible, it was worth much more to them for sport than for selling in the market. He cast the bait out again, and this time it was only a few seconds before I hooked another catfish about the same size. By lunchtime, I had caught 7 of them, and although the novelty had worn off, I was still hoping to catch a 100-kilo monster, or at least something other than a catfish. The biggest ever catfish caught in Thailand was 293 kilos, but I would have been happy with anything in the 200 range. For lunch, I was given a menu, and my order was brought to my hut. There were cushions provided, so after lunch I was able to take my usual siesta. The afternoon continued with me never having to wait more than a minute to catch a fish. They were always catfish and always around the same size, as if they were produced on a conveyor belt.
Big reel, I'm gonna spin you around. You're gonna catch me some fish, at least 100 pounds. Big reel, this is our lucky day. So give me some line, and let's get on our way.
I would never have believed it possible, but halfway through the afternoon, it felt like catching fish was a chore, so I finished early. The irony was that there were countless times in my past when I was perfectly happy to sit by a riverbank all day without catching anything. By the time I got back to the hotel after another traffic jam, I was shattered, and my arms and back were aching from fighting the powerful catfish. Federika also had a tiring day, so we struggled down the road to a Japanese restaurant that was recommended to us. It wasn't great, and it was the only Japanese restaurant I had ever known that didn't serve sushi, but it was full of Japanese people, and they seemed to like it. Most of them were taking bits of raw meat from a plate and putting them into a pot of boiling liquid in the middle of the table to cook. What is the point of going to a restaurant and doing your own cooking? There was an amazing number of people selling street food with a wide variety, including fried grasshoppers and cockroaches. Many of the stalls were homemade contraptions mounted onto motorcycles or push bikes, and they were all doing a thriving trade. The food was so cheap that a lot of people didn't bother to cook at home. I knew we should have been adventurous and tried the street food, but why take the risk when we could get a good meal in the food hall for £2? A lot of the street food was barbecued in front of us, so I might have been tempted if I hadn't seen them washing the dishes in buckets of filthy water. Next morning, we woke early to visit the weekend market, reputed to be one of the biggest in the world. Having grown accustomed to the heat, we were faced with a new problem, the freezing cold temperature on the SkyTrain. It was so bad that we had to get off at one stop so I could stand on the platform to warm up. It was obvious which station we had to get off at for the market because nearly everyone got off and we just had to follow the crowds. There were some great bargains, but we had to control ourselves because whatever we bought, we had to carry around with us for the next 6 weeks. One thing that impressed me was that there was no pressure to buy anything. The cost of the food was amazing. We had lunch in a big tent, which cost £1.80 for the 2 of us. There was no danger of it winning any Egon Ronay stars, but it was perfectly acceptable and must have been the cheapest meal of my life. Not far from there was a trendy cafe where we had 2 espressos, which cost £3.80, making them the most expensive espressos I have ever bought and probably the worst tasting. It was worth it, though, to sit and watch a Spanish chef dancing happily to an Elvis Presley song while standing in front of a giant paella dish. He was wearing a traditional chef's outfit, complete with a hat, and looked like there was no place in the world he would rather be. Some serious anti-government demonstrations were happening in one area of Bangkok, though we would never have known if we hadn't read it in the newspapers. The only effect it had on us was when we went on the temple tour. The guide had to avoid a small area where the demonstrations were at their worst. The demonstrations in the centre of Bangkok were becoming more violent, but elsewhere everyone was going about their business normally, and as we were on our way to Chang Mai, it didn't affect us. I was surprised at how many people were unable to speak English. In most countries we had travelled to, English was a second language, and when someone didn't speak English, we were usually able to make ourselves understood, especially when someone was trying to sell us something. We were in a juice bar at the airport, and neither of the young men serving knew the word juice. The only thing I recognized was iced green tea, so I ordered that, but what I got was a thick green sludge, which tasted like Kermit the Frog had been put through a blender. Our flight to Chang Mai in the north of Thailand was supposed to be an hour and a half, but it only took an hour. We were greeted at the hotel with a cold towel, a fruit juice, and a big smile. We were in luck because every Sunday they closed the main road through the city and turned it into a giant market. The side roads were also closed, so there were little shows here and there and large areas set aside for food. The atmosphere was fantastic, and unlike the indoor malls in Bangkok, which were freezing, the temperature that evening was very comfortable. We were pottering around the market when suddenly everyone stopped where they were, and the national anthem was played over a loudspeaker system. It was quite an eerie experience when 1 minute the place was buzzing with activity and the next there was total silence. One woman, who must have been 100 years old, was selling beautiful hanging origami figures. She was not able to get off her chair and didn't speak English, so she pointed to a card with the prices on it. Federika bought a few for presents and was served by a young woman I assumed was a member of her family. There were lots of interesting street musicians, including an elderly husband and wife, with him playing a strange-looking wind instrument while she danced using only her hands. A pop group played on a large stage with very young girls singing and doing simple dance routines, and you couldn't help but love them. And a girl sang a solo while a group of girls dressed in green party dresses danced beautifully around her. Next morning, we booked a taxi driver for half a day, which only cost £15 to take us wherever we wanted. We started with what we thought was a snake farm, but it turned out to be a snake show. We sat in a small arena, and a man appeared. He took 2 cobras out of a basket and carefully placed them on the floor in front of him. The cobras were highly poisonous and lightning fast, so it was surprising to see the man teasing them both. He waved his hand a few inches from them and even whacked them on the head, and although they tried to strike, they missed every time. The man did have several fingers missing, so maybe the trick wasn't always so successful. At one point, he leaned forward and kissed them on the head and even put one in his mouth. He put the cobras back in the box and produced a small snake called a jumping rat snake, which was not poisonous but did bite. Unlike the cobras, this snake was determined to slither towards the audience, which caused much screaming and running away, but the handlers dragged it back to the centre. Next came a giant python, which the man put into a pool of water where pythons are most dangerous. He jumped into the pool with the python and disappeared under the water until suddenly he surfaced with the python around his neck. The highlight of the show was when he went hunting around in one of the snake boxes and suddenly threw one into the middle of the audience. People became hysterical, and one girl ran out of the arena and refused to come back. The man assured her that she would be safe, but it was not easy accepting assurance from a man with missing body parts, so she stayed where she was. It turned out to be just a piece of rope that he had thrown. It was a very entertaining show, although probably less so for the snakes. As we were walking away from the arena, we saw the snake man, and he invited us to hold one of the snakes. Much as I wanted to get my hands on the snake, my job as head cameraman prevented me, so I graciously allowed Federika to do it. The snake wrapped itself around Federika's neck, and I was amazed at how well she took to it, and even enjoyed stroking its skin.
Smooth talking, cool walking, swimming against the tide, hand shaking, wave breaking, there's nothing that he can't hide. Smooth talking, cool walking, stealing every show, quick thinking, unblinking, there's no place he can't go.
Next stop was a monkey show, where we were greeted with a monkey in a cage, not much bigger than itself. There was a long pit with monkeys tied to stakes with ropes only a couple of feet long, so they could do little more than walk in small circles all day. When the show started, the monkeys did various tricks, but it soon became too distressing to watch. At the entrance, it said the monkeys were set free at 5 p.m. every day, which we assumed meant there was a large, netted enclosure where they had some freedom. But when we asked where this place was, suddenly no one spoke a word of English. It was obvious they were kept in tiny cages and only let out to perform their tricks. I filmed some of it, but ended up deleting it. So why did I feel bad about the monkeys being kept in small cages, but not about snakes being kept in boxes? It seems to me that humanity only extends to the cute and cuddly. Keep a cat in a tiny cage all its life, and you will be arrested. But do the same with a chicken until it is time to stick it in the oven, and it's past the roast potatoes every time. The last stop was Tiger Kingdom. For an exorbitant fee, you got to sit with a cuddly, man-eating tiger. It was a bit scary at first, but we soon got used to it, as the only thing the tigers were interested in was sleeping. Entrance fees were dependent on the size of the tiger we wanted to cuddle, so we paid to see them all. The small ones were fun as they played together like kittens. The big ones looked pretty docile, but had the same look that domestic cats give their owners, which says, "Keep me fed and you'll be safe." The main danger was the trees, which had an electrified wire around them to stop tigers from climbing. We were warned about the wire, but now and again I forgot and brushed up against one, which gave quite a nasty shock. Next day we went to see more temples, and whilst they were all very interesting, I was beginning to wonder how many more I could take. To me, one statue of Buddha looks much the same as another, but the artist in Federika seems to be able to discern a difference. It was strange that most of the tourist attractions had information in Thai only, even though most of the tourists were not Thai. It always amused me to see the inventive ways people found of making money, and outside one temple there was an enterprise I thoroughly approved of. A woman was selling little cages containing small birds. For a small fee, she handed you a cage, and you get to set the birds free and watch them fly into the trees or into the mouth of a waiting cat. I suppose there was always the possibility that they were trained birds that flew around in a circle and went back to the woman as soon as our back was turned. We went on an organized tour of an elephant sanctuary. There were many elephant tours to choose from, but after the experience with the monkeys, we didn't want to go to one where you rode the elephants or there was a show. We chose one that was a rescue sanctuary for elephants that had been abused. Some of the stories we were told were harrowing, but at least now they were living in peace and comfort. Most had been used for logging, some for begging on the street and some for circuses. One had stepped on a landmine in Burma and had his foot badly damaged. Another had both hips broken by being forced to mate when she was too young. There were so many heartbreaking stories. We started the day by feeding the elephants with bananas and bits of pumpkin. They ate tons of food each day, so whatever we gave them was gobbled up in no time. The rest of the day was spent going from elephant family to family and getting to know them. They all seemed very friendly, but suddenly our guide insisted we get into the Land Rover as Naughty Boy was coming. This was a baby elephant that was running towards us, and we were told he was the only elephant in the reserve that could be aggressive. He certainly had that look in his eye, but when he got close, they shooed him away, so there was never any danger. I loved the way the elephants spent a lot of their day looking around for places to scratch themselves. Life must be hell when you don't have fingernails to give yourself a good scratch. One elephant spent ages rubbing himself against a wooden pillar, but the poor thing looked like it couldn't quite hit the spot. The highlight of the day came when we went down to the river to bathe the elephants. A group of us stood on either side of an elephant, throwing buckets of water over them, with a lot of the water going over the top and falling on the people on the other side. It was great fun and ended more like a water fight than an elephant bath. While all this went on, the elephants continued to munch away happily at their food, looking at us sarcastically as you would do with kids playing the fool. It was only a 1-hour flight to Luang Prabang in Laos, a small, highly recommended town. Our hotel was outside town and a big disappointment. I wondered why it had such good reviews on Booking.com, but soon realized it had nothing to do with the accommodation and everything to do with the manager. The woman who owned the hotel employed her gay son to manage it, and he was so likable it would be difficult to give them a bad review. The building was a masterpiece of bad design. The rooms were dark, with dark, shabby furniture. There was a bath literally inside the bedroom, and a curtain to pull across for privacy. The light switch for the toilet also controlled the light above the bath, so if you turned the toilet light on in the middle of the night, it lit up the whole bedroom. It was in a general state of bad repair, and we would have liked to have moved somewhere else, but apart from having paid in advance, we wouldn't have had the heart to tell the manager. It was frustrating walking around town and seeing so many nice little guest houses, but we accepted our fate and were determined to make the most of it. The drop in temperature came as a shock. Once the sun went down, it got quite cold, and as the hotel was 2 kilometers from the centre of town, we had to sit in an open tuk-tuk, which was freezing. During the day, it was nice and warm, though. We went to the market every night, where sellers set up their wares on pavements instead of stalls, which made a pleasant change. There was a large square with lots of seating where they showed films that people could watch free of charge. One evening we joined the crowds to climb Mount Farsi Sacred Hill and watch the sunset, which was spectacular, although a little crowded. Kwang Si Falls was a group of pools fed by a waterfall. Some of the pools were busy with youngsters swinging on a rope and dropping into the water. We chickened out of that, but we did brave the cold water and had a swim. The highlight of the afternoon was seeing the face of a woman who went into the public toilet and came running out with her hand over her mouth and nose, looking like she had just been to hell and back. When we first arrived in Thailand, I was very sensible about what and where I ate, but as I had a strong stomach, my standards dropped, and even after eating in a couple of dodgy places, I was okay, so I got a bit overconfident. We were in a reputable restaurant which was full of Westerners, and for a change, I thought I would order sweet and sour pork. It was a pretty stupid choice, even without the waitress's warning. When she heard my order, she repeated the word pork, as if to say, "Are you crazy? You want pork?" Federika also warned me, but I still didn't listen. I ate half of it, as it wasn't very good anyway, and never thought anything more about it until I spent half the night on the toilet. The worst thing was that the toilet was very small and the extractor fan was linked to the light, so I couldn't turn it on because it would have lit up the bedroom and woken Federika. It was a very unpleasant night, and although I was okay in the morning, I still took it easy and stayed in the room. The restaurant that the hotel claimed to have didn't exist, and the only other restaurant in our little area had a kitchen that no self-respecting dog would eat in, so we had to go to town for a light lunch. Fortunately, these things never lasted long with me, so by the afternoon we were able to go on a 2-hour cruise up the Mekong River to visit the Pak O caves. Cruise might not be the right word, as the boat looked like it had been knocked together out of driftwood. We had tiny seats like those used by kids in infant schools, and for padding, there was a thin piece of carpet, but it was fun, and my arse did eventually recover. Our first stop was the whiskey village, so called because they distill their own whiskey out of rice. I hate whiskey, but I had a taste of theirs, and it was more like a strong, sweet liquor than whiskey. As for their still, it consisted of an oil drum with a pipe sticking out the side where the spirits dripped into a filthy cloth. Their whiskey was on sale in bottles that contained either a small snake or a scorpion. Why anyone would want to drink something with a drowned snake floating around inside was beyond me. Next stop was the Pak O caves, which contained lots of statues of Buddha and other various religious artifacts. It was divided into an upper and lower cave. The local authorities didn't seem to have the hang of tourism, as the upper cage was in complete darkness, so only visible to the well-informed tourists who had brought torches. Most of the time, I couldn't see a thing. Someone could have made a fortune selling torches, but there was nothing. Or maybe there was someone selling torches, but no one could see them because it was so dark. We did manage to get a glimpse of some of the statues, and I must admit the dim light did give them a special quality. Coming back from the caves, we were chatting to an Irishman and got a shock when he told us he was having trouble getting a visa for Vietnam, and we were due to fly there the next day. I was always very careful about these things and had read on the Vietnamese website that we could get a visa on arrival at the airport, which was quite common. Back at the hotel, I did some more research and found a lot of conflicting information, including 2 Norwegians in our hotel who told us they had just come from Hanoi and that they had no trouble getting a visa on arrival. Federika phoned Laos Airlines, who we were flying with, and they confirmed that we did need a visa and they wouldn't let us on the plane without one. After further research, I discovered that you definitely could get a visa on arrival, but for that, you need to show them a letter of approval from an agency. However, the Vietnamese embassy in the UK advises against getting a letter of approval, as there are so many bogus agents out there. As for the Norwegians, it turned out that Scandinavians didn't need visas at all, so there you are, clear as mud. It looked like we were going to lose our money for the flight and hotels, but we were lucky that a Vietnamese consul had opened in Luang Prabang only a few weeks earlier. They claimed to be open at 7 a.m., which we took with a pinch of salt, but we got there at 8 a.m., which turned out to be when they actually opened. Our hearts sank when the man behind the counter said it would take 3 days to get the visa, but when we told him we needed it immediately, he said we could pay an extra $10 each and we could have it at 2 p.m. What a relief. After the consulate, we went for breakfast in a lovely little cafe on the main street and sat at a table outside with a coffee and a pastry. We were basking in the sunshine and thinking how much we had enjoyed our stay in Luang Prabang when a truck pulled up opposite. A man got out and walked over to our table, grabbed our umbrella and threw it in his truck. Our waitress suddenly appeared and quickly started clearing our table. Then a waiter asked us to stand, and the next thing we knew, the table and chairs were taken away, and we were left standing with coffee cups in hand, wondering if we were part of one of those hidden camera hoaxes. The waitress tried to explain what had happened, and although we didn't understand a word of what she said, we guessed that they weren't supposed to have tables on the pavements. They had lost the umbrella, and if they hadn't removed the table and chairs, they would probably have lost them as well. We always associate this kind of daft bureaucracy with England, but I suppose it happens everywhere, even in countries that are so desperate to attract tourism. Back at the hotel, the manager and his staff gave us a big send-off. pleading for a good review on Booking.com. It was one of the worst hotels I had ever stayed at, and I wouldn't have thought twice about giving it a bad review, but Federica insisted on a good one because the manager was so nice. If other people had been more honest about it, we would never have stayed there, so rather than lie, I didn't write anything and left it to Federica if she wanted to, although she never did. We had been assured that our visas would be ready by 2 p.m., but you never know, so it was a great relief to find everything okay, and we made our way to the airport. Thank you for listening to Nemo James Travel Diaries. Photos and videos of my adventures, together with my music and the books I have published, can be found on my website www.nemojames.com/travels. You will also find details of my mobile phone app, Wordbanker, which is designed to help you build a foreign language vocabulary. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please click the subscribe button and share it with your friends. It will mean a lot to me. In the next episode, we will be traveling to Hanoi, Hue, Hoi An, and Siem Reap.
Do you like the songs I've sung to you? Do you like the time that we've been through? Do you like my music? Do you like to sing along? Yes, we like the songs that you have sung. We like the friends that we've become. We like your music. We like your music. We like your music and the words of your song.